Remember the show Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide? A lot of us grew up on it and have fond memories of the hilarious tips and quirky characters. Well, fast forward to today, and the cast has been back in the spotlight, but not necessarily for the best reasons. Since they started their podcast, Ned's Declassified Podcast Survival Guide, the internet has had a lot to say about them, both good and bad. Today, we're diving into everything from Lindsey Shaw's frustrations over reboots, to some controversial discussions they had on the podcast, and even their recent struggles as the podcast was canceled. Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide aired on Nickelodeon from 2004 to 2007, starring Devon Werkheiser as Ned, Daniel Curtis Lee as Simon Cookie Nelson Cook, and Lindsey Shaw as Jennifer Mose Mosley. The show was all about surviving middle school with humor and relatability, and it's no wonder so many people still remember it. Last year, Devon, Daniel, and Lindsey reunited to create a podcast called Ned's Declassified Podcast Survival Guide, where they began sharing behind-the-scenes stories and personal experiences from their time on the show. The podcast stirred up a lot of nostalgia, but it also got a lot of attention for some unexpected reasons. On the podcast, the cast opened up about their lives during and after the show. They shared memories, joked around, and even revealed some personal stories that fans had never heard before. For example, Lindsey and Devon talked about their past dating history, and Lindsey even admitted that she had been interested in other cast members while they were filming.
Dude, I ran through every Ned's cast member before I landed on Devon.
Damn.
Remember that?
The chosen one. You take that one of two ways.
I remember telling Theo that I liked him, and we held hands at the movies.
He's so mysterious.
And Rob. Yep. And then Dev was like, hey, and I was like, you guys, hey, do you remember that
What are you gonna ask on this podcast? What are you gonna ask on this public podcast, Lindsey?
Do you remember that?
The first what?
BJ.
I actually do. You really want to talk about this on the pod?
I just wanted to say that I felt like a failure from that point because
he didn't finish.
I know. Yep.
No.
You didn't. You did it. After a moment, he just said, thanks, okay. And you got up and you went to the bathroom and you did your thing.
No. I don't remember that at all.
Which one do you remember? The one on the couch?
No, I remember the one in the backseat of your car. We can't talk about this on the pod.
The cast members also touched on more serious topics like addiction and mental health struggles, sharing some of their own life challenges since the show ended. They admitted that life after Ned's Declassified hadn't always been easy, with each of them facing unique difficulties growing up as child stars. Many fans appreciated their honesty, feeling like it offered a more complete picture of what it's like to grow up in Hollywood. But the mix of heavy topics and explicit stories left others feeling conflicted, especially as these conversations unfolded under the Ned's Declassified name. While the podcast was growing in popularity, a new wave of drama began. Lindsey Shaw expressed frustration that other shows, like Wizards of Waverly Place, were getting reboots or spin-offs, while Ned's Declassified hadn't been given any new life. She made a TikTok expressing her disappointment, even comparing Ned's Declassified to Spider-Man, saying that if Spider-Man can be rebooted countless times, why not give Ned's a chance?
I just don't understand how Spider-Man can be remade 437,896 times and Ned's Declassified can't even get reboot once. Not even reboot once for a crappy TV movie. Just let us have a crappy TV movie.
The video went viral, and while some fans understood her point, others thought the comparison was a little too far, with people pointing out that Spider-Man is an iconic comic book character with a massive franchise. Many felt that Ned's Declassified, while beloved, didn't quite have the same level of impact. Comments poured in saying, "Girl, be serious. Ned's Declassified was mid-tier at best." Others took it further, saying they barely remembered the show beyond Coconut Head or the catchphrases, questioning if the show really deserved a reboot. Some fans were even frustrated, pointing out that the reboot, if it were to happen, should appeal to the now adult audience that grew up with it. In fact, the cast themselves shared this vision.
There's a lot of versions of people asking, why don't we do the show for adults? But we don't own the IP for Ned, so we developed an idea. We pitched it to the studio who owns the IP, and as of now, they're just passing on it.
They wanted to create a version for adults dealing with the realities of life after school, a guide for navigating adulthood, maybe even with some comedic survival tips for grown-ups. Devon, Daniel, and Lindsey actually did pitch an adult version of Ned's Declassified to the network, but the idea was turned down. The network preferred the original, family-friendly format, similar to how Disney wanted Lizzie McGuire's reboot to stay kid-appropriate, while Hilary Duff wanted it to tackle adult themes. This issue of networks wanting family-friendly content for reboots has left many fans disappointed, feeling like these reboots don't align with the audience's interests. After all, the fans have grown up, and they're looking for stories that resonate with their adult lives. But while Lindsey's frustration about the reboot got people talking, some viewers were already divided over certain podcast moments. At one point, the cast had gone live on TikTok and started laughing about a serious topic, the Quiet on Set documentary, which covers troubling experiences of some child stars. People who watched felt that the cast wasn't taking the topic seriously, and were disturbed by how they laughed laughed and joked during the live, some fans were disappointed, feeling like they weren't showing empathy for the difficult realities some former child actors have faced. The backlash from that live session was intense. Lindsey, Devon, and Daniel did come out to apologize, explaining that they hadn't watched the documentary and didn't fully understand the gravity of the issues being discussed. They clarified that they were multitasking during the live and hadn't intended to come off as dismissive. They admitted that if they had seen the documentary beforehand, they would have understood the topic's weight and approached it differently. Lindsey specifically said she felt terrible after watching the documentary and seeing how their live was perceived. In spite of the apologies, the response from fans was mixed. Some accepted it as a genuine mistake, saying they appreciated the cast's honesty and apology, while others remained skeptical, feeling like it was too little, too late. For those who had followed the cast since the early days of Neds Declassified, it was a disappointing moment, but others believed that it was simply a misunderstanding that got out of hand. On top of all of this, more drama unfolded when Neds Declassified podcast survival guide was abruptly canceled by Podco, the network behind it. Podco, which is known for shows like Wizards of Waverly Pod and Full House Rewind, was created by Christy Carlson Romano and her husband Brendan Rooney, focusing on nostalgic reboots and discussions of old shows. Podco made the decision to part ways with Neds and a few other shows, which led fans to speculate that there may have been internal drama behind the scenes. Some wondered if Lindsey and Christy Carlson Romano had a falling out, or if Podco was moving in a new direction entirely. Lindsey announced on Instagram that the podcast was ending and that it wasn't their choice.
The Pretty Little Liars podcast is over, and so is the Neds Declassified podcast, for now. Podco has decided to do their own thing, so we will not be associated with them in any type of way any longer. Yeah, it's been fun doing Pretty Little Liars and Neds Declassified. It isn't our choice to end it.
Lindsey seemed disappointed, but also hopeful that this wasn't the end for the Neds podcast. She even encouraged fans to reach out to Podco if they wanted to know more, directing them to Christy Carlson Romano and Brendan Rooney for further answers. The Podco YouTube channel hasn't posted any new episodes in a while, and other shows on the network seem to be on a break as well, so it's unclear what the future holds for them. There's definitely something going on, and fans are eager to know more. Meanwhile, Devon, Daniel, and Lindsey have hinted that they're considering taking the podcast in a new direction, possibly even going independent to keep things going. They joked about becoming their own production company, saying they're taking over management and are excited to see where things go from here. The three of them also joked about the chances of a Neds Declassified reboot, with a mix of hope and humor. Given Lindsey's TikTok about the reboot situation, it's likely that if any real plans for a reboot were in the works, she wouldn't have posted that video venting her frustrations. However, the cast still seems passionate about bringing Neds Declassified back, so who knows what the future might hold. Now, with all the drama and misunderstandings, it's easy to see why some people are divided on the cast's actions. However, it's also worth considering that this could be a classic case of things getting blown out of proportion by social media. We've seen how fast opinions can form based on snippets of videos or lives without the full context. Many fans believe that the cast deserves some grace, especially since they've grown up and are navigating their own challenges. For those who remember Neds Declassified fondly, the show was about helping kids navigate school and life's challenges with humor and resilience. It's possible that the podcast and the idea of a reboot were the cast's way of connecting with fans again, sharing their experiences, and making people laugh. Life after childhood stardom can be tough, and it's not surprising that they've faced some unique struggles. Maybe this recent backlash is just a bump in the road, and they'll be able to rebuild that connection with their audience. After all, the show was a source of positivity and fun for so many people growing up, and perhaps that spirit can carry through, even if the podcast continues independently. At the end of the day, it's clear the cast is passionate about reconnecting with fans, and if they do bring the podcast back, it could be an opportunity to share their stories in a way that's true to them. So, what do you think? Was this all just a misunderstanding? Should we give the cast a second chance, or do you think some things just went too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.